Raymond, one of the things that I saw that caught my attention by, at Junini 37 says, talk about university fees and students. The 15% didn't work. They're using 60% increment. Students are suffering. And it reminds me of one thing, one message I got also, and even a lot of parents who got in touch with me because they had complained about, getting accommodation for their children, particularly at the University of Ghana. Yeah. In fact, you had a lot of people reaching out and saying, do you know, how can you help, to get accommodation at the University of Ghana? And look, in one of the, some of the private hostels on campus, that said they were available, they had vacancies. Raymond, I was told there was vacancy in the evening. The following morning, it was finished.
I have seen in fact, you saw the complaint from continuing students, and it's so reminiscent of my days. So, when we went into first year, we got a place to put our heads. It was moving into the second year that they started the in, out, out, out policy. It's of course I joined the demonstration.
Okay.
And I do recall this very beautiful young lady. I suspect she even won Miss Legon, who was actually, when we were returning from the no, it was Castle then. Yeah, we went to demonstrate in front of the place. They asked us to wait. Then Kojo Piano came to take the complaint from us. Then when we were going back, some people actually were not leaving as early as perhaps the security people wanted. So they decided to drive us away. And the water cannons and there was no police on the how do you call it, the horses and all of that, driving us away. So the girl was running. I think she fell. She broke the left foot or so. Up till now, she still uses what they call it, one of those clutches, right?
Oh.
She's still having problems with that particular leg. I just hope that those incidents would have been the last time we'll be having the conversations about accommodation at the University of Ghana, for example. But sometimes it tells you how this state is like. First, schools primarily provide academic facilities. Schools are judged basically on their ability to provide teaching and learning materials to people so that they will deliver. We took it upon ourselves, modeling like those Oxford institutions, to attach accommodation. So we started with traditional halls. Then we attached certain units away. During the Champions time, he built some other annexes in Legon too. Since that time, we've always had difficulty in expanding. Student numbers increase, sometimes purely out of government decision to insist that certain groups should be taking more, certain schools should be taking more. These student numbers increase, and there is a vacuum as to whether everybody can be provided accommodation. Let's not forget, it was after that demonstration that we did, that government promised that we're going to put up facility. Then the investor took up the promise and went to do the Liman stretch. So the Liman, Janaka, and all of those, they said there were 7,000 beds or so that were being considered at the time. It was after the demonstration that this happened. That was the panacea, that we were going to fix it. But a big issue came up. The issue that came up was how much you should charge students for accommodation on campus, even if it's privately owned. Because when a private man puts their money into a project like that, the expectation is that he should reap some of the money. But because of government control and other factors, students felt we're too poor to pay the prices that were on the market. And so we have to reduce it to a level that we accept. That conversation has not been concluded. Because up to today, it's one of the biggest reasons private people do not want to go into Legon to go and build hostels. Because it is not something that can run cost effectively. That is why everybody would like to be in the traditional hall, regardless of the state of the facilities there. That's why we run them down. We run them down because a certain thinking in this state says education to some people should be so minimally costed that people should be able to afford it. That thinking has influenced how we treat facilities in ways that nobody wants to put their money in there. And I'm told, even but for the COVID situation and also what's happening with the dollar and so, people would have tried providing alternatives on Legon campus. But I'm saying that unless the school comes up with a policy that says it is not our responsibility to provide accommodation for you, why should they do so? There's a pretense, and since Haruna Jusu's time, when this cost-sharing formula came in, there's a pretense that government pays 70%, the rest of the partners pay 30% for a child's education. I am insisting that hardly happens. I remember my time at Legon, consistently, the school had complained about subventions not being paid. So government will not release the money, and yet there's a general thinking that, oh, government is interested in funding most of your education, but will not release the money. Schools are now then forced to increase what they call it, school fees. Like the way when they increased the school fees in 2019, they say, oh, there are times you can't do that, 2020's election and all of those other factors. So put it on hold. The next year, they actually put it on hold too. Then they said, as for 2022, we cannot bear the, what they call it, put it on hold. We want to put all on the student. It became a different problem.
Yeah.
Then there's a fight over that. I'm told the ministry is giving a different directive. If we pretend that we are funding tertiary education, which has always been problematic, if we don't stop pretending that the state is funding tertiary education, because in reality, apart from paying salaries of teachers, let me tell you one clear indication of how state fails to fund tertiary education. Check the major projects that are being done by the state and get fund on Legon campus. Some of them, 15, 20 years. There's a certain project that I went to meet it in the school. We left the school. I'm told now that they have all African games or so. That's when they want to complete the project. It should tell you how.
Okay, I think I've seen that project.
Yes, it should tell you how when we pretend that we want to fund education, it ends up not being funded at all. Then again, I mean, see, the policy for a state is what can we fund and what can we not fund, so that the rest of the conversation is had in this republic. On one hand, our schools are deteriorating in quality and standard. Let me give you indications of leaders of universities who try to do on their own. NSIT, for example. Look at the roads matter and what happened to it. Yeah. I will put the roads there. I will tow it. I will retrieve the monies. You see the first indications he had with that, and the fights that people had all over the place. All of a sudden, people were living in North Legon, felt Legon as a thoroughfare that by hook or crook they should use. Mm-hmm. That has calmed down now. The second issue that also came up. Remember this Africa Integrals issue that he was involved in. Whilst many people felt that was a very ingenious and wonderful way of trying to raise facilities and what they call infrastructure on Legon campus, look at how the man was bastardized. It reached a point, a minister in this republic said the man had put his name on the University of Ghana Medical Center.
Yes,
yes, he wanted to own it. I mean, how can you be this incorrect in your thinking? This is a minister of the republic. But NSIT was made to look like the guy who was against everything proper and was actually seeking to steal Lagos money and engaging in fraudulent deals. Today, the facilities, if they are started from his time and build them up to this particular time, we would have been having less conversation about infrastructure on Legon campus. So, I am not sure, and it's just like how we deal with Ghana's problems. We pretend we are solving it, but we never get to solve it.
But you know, Raymond, and you just came back from, England, where you were studying, not so long ago, even though it's more than 2 years now. But you know, when I studied in Cardiff years ago, you had students around who lived in other places and could always get to campus.
Yeah.
It wasn't, and you see, the university had also done something. For international students particularly, you were provided with accommodation. Mm-hmm. And so the university is built, flats, lots of them.
Yeah.
Every flat has every floor has about 8 rooms. And there you have one student to a room. You're giving one student to a room and all of that. And the university also went a step further by actually arranging or liaising with owners of houses.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
That are close to the university.
So that they can release
the houses to the students. So the university actually has a catalog of all these, and it would show you and say, these are the other facilities that you could take advantage of in case you do not want the university accommodation. Now, they would give you that option even before you leave your country to the university.
Yeah.
And so you know in advance that you're coming there, and would have given you a room and would give you a deadline that if you don't come to pay and accept this room by this time, you would lose it.
Forfeit it, yeah.
I lost my room. I didn't get there at the right time.
Yeah.
When I lost my room, I called again, and they said, okay, they could help me get another room. Mm-hmm. But that room was going to be ready on a Monday, but I was getting there on a Thursday. So I'd have to find my own accommodation.
Till the time
the room gets ready. They can assist you.
Yeah, and I had the experience of In fact, they were not promising me any accommodation. In fact, they sent me a letter. An accommodation officer says, we can get you this place. This is how much it costs. These are the different ones around. And even how much places around, people are providing private accommodation around was also costed. And they will tell you what is the alternative to you there. But the only thing they told me, which was very clear, in bold print, the bold print part was that, listen, this is only for a year because you are coming from there. If there is accommodation available the next year, you have to apply for it and we'll consider your application.
Yes.
That is, and you see, I realized something. The one that was being provided by school was cheaper than those ones around.
Oh, that's very true.
Yes, so I think many people would have preferred that one. Like the way in Legon, people would prefer the traditional halls because it's always cheaper than the other places. I don't know. In fact, it was during the decongestion period that there was the understanding that take out, and it was a certain distinguished professor, Sir John Daniels, who said to make Legon a proper university, decongest your halls of residence because they are breeding sites for all sorts of things. So they took so many students, and those days, because of official student numbers were like 5. But the room we have pictures, so like 22 people are in one room. Sometimes you share the floor space anyway. But if you look beyond that, we have not, just like others plan elsewhere, they don't give you any promises. They just tell you that you can get this room here, can get it that way. When you pay, we give you the accommodation. The only difficulty is that today, Legon has enough lands to accommodate every student if you want to do on this land. But the problem is that the people say when we come and put up the accommodation there, government and other people determine the pricing in such a way that they will not be profitable. So no private person will want to put their money there. That conversation, nobody is willing to have it. I don't know why. So I am sure, like the way people are putting up houses in East Legon, so many people, so many great people are putting up houses, accommodations for rental in all over the place, even around Legon. Just step back to North Legon or even West Legon. There are so many places for accommodation there. Look. But any student from a a poor home will not be able to pay. Yeah. The only difficulty here is that unless we bridge that gap, that Legon has lands available, we can use it for this and that project. But you do not determine for me that I should not charge what are realistic, what they call the fees. Because students will protest, and I know we used to do that at the same time. We used to even say that I had a friend who was at Pentagon in a single room. At the time, the father was a minister. I used to complain that they are not part of the country. That when we in the traditional house of the real people in Legon, they being a single room with air conditioning as a student was extreme luxury. But they could pay for it. It was like 30-something thousand.
You see, Raymond.
But compared to we, the ordinary people.
Yes, Raymond, the question about cost, you see, they're not being allowed to charge what they want to charge. That conversation is a very important conversation. Yeah. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why also because not everybody can have access to the traditional halls, which are very affordable.
Yeah.
Now, if I can't have access to the traditional halls, which are very affordable, and you have a building on the University of Ghana campus, which you probably may want to build, operate, and transfer to the university. Now, within that period, how much did you spend in building that facility? Yeah. It's important for all of us to know. How much can you charge over the period to be able to offset your cost? Yeah. How much interest do you want over the period? We can know. Then you probably could hand it over to the university to manage and pay you these monies.
I know that it should be simple based on the finance involved, but that has never been the estimation. For example, if students take a decision at an SRC general meeting that Liman is expensive, the calculations, no matter how you consider it, and the students will not put the pressure on the university authorities first. They're going to put it on government. Government feeling the pressure from student protests and all of that, then will buckle under pressure, go and tell the university authorities that the school belongs to the country. We are the ones who own the country. And they say it all the time. We own the school. Please, when the students want to reduce the accommodation prices. It is the reason. You ask developers. I do not know how many have approached the university, even recently, approached the university. But when they see the terms, when they see the average cost of accommodation on campus, they just realize that this is not something like that.
No, because you see, you must involve government from the start. All of us would agree. Now, when we agree on something today, I mean, it's so expensive. Some of the other, residential facilities on University of Ghana campus, it's very expensive for the ordinary Ghanaian. And so, if you're handing it over to the university to manage for you, the university would know that this is how much you spent. This is how much you want to have as returns on your investment. This is the number of years. We would calculate it and pay.
In fact, I think if the best way out of this is for government to decide that I'm putting up the buildings, if it is really a very nice venture, because government can put up affordable buildings and bear the cost involved. That is a very fine duty.
Unless you want the universities to charge realistic fees
Oh,
and build them. Having said all of these, I think it's also important. I mean, there's a whole university conversation, not just one university, because the other universities go to KNUST today, go to the University of Cape Coast today. Students are still going through these challenges. There's this whole thing about in, out is still around. And they have vast land. So it's two things. Hand it over to private developers, they do it. Or if you want the universities to build, they might as well charge realistic fees. And that's where the problem is. Can government allow the universities to charge realistic fees? What would be those realistic fees? Would Ghanaians be willing to pay? I am not sure.
That's an interesting point. I think it goes to the core of funding tertiary education. We need to fix that thing. For example, I remember a similar debate because some people in KNUST could just not, and the argument they were making was that if I came from Upper East today and had not been to Kumasi before, and you expect me to go and look around Ayejiase and other places, to go and find what they call it, a place to live, the alternatives were too expensive for the ordinary person to access education. I remember it was at that time that the SRC said we are even taking a lead on our own. We are taking dues from students to build an SRC hostel and so on, so that some of the people we know by hook or crook cannot pay, we'll put them in the SRC hostel at very reduced cost. I don't know whether they still charge very small for that facility, but
They do.
At some point in time, some of those were innovative things. The same way President Kufuor said, see, as a gift from me, I'm building the Acquah Annex C presidential hostel for you to know that government is interested in investing in accommodation on campus. That was built. In fact, it was the best facility at the time when it was built on Legon campus. There was also thinking, I remember when the people decided that they'll build Jubilee, because the university's Jubilee. So a lot of people brought money together, alumni and all of that, and they could do that. There is innovative thinking that can solve a problem. Universities are full of enough knowledge to be able to fix the problem, except that the interference is way too much. And many people fear that if you go and invest like the Africa Integrity issue became, slight change in leadership, then government changes, then there are thinkings about, oh, can we continue with this project? Can we still do the things we said we want to do? Then my money is in very tight corners. I have to try and use other means of retrieving the monies involved here. This is really the core of the issues that we should be looking at. Again, proper planning led to universities having more lands available to them. That we cannot utilize lands which are available to schools properly. It's shocking to me. There is also a discussion that's at the core of all of this. How do we ensure that our schools are up to the standards elsewhere and the international standards that can make you be comfortable in taking degrees here? Because people are willing to pay in some private schools 10 times the amount that they are paying at Legon. Why can't they pay higher for the same quality in the main traditional or government schools?